I'm going to talk short. And while listening, I just realized that I have a goal to leave you with questions, not to give answers or not to make something more understandable. That was my goal. Like, if there will be something which will pinch you, which will make you ask or argue or object, so my goal will be done. So I'm going to talk more of stories. And then if you will resonate with that, and if you remember your story, it would be nice if you can share afterwards or in comments so we can discuss around that. So I call it mental health comes from home, friends, colleagues, and of course, culture. So the agenda will be quite simple. I'll tell you some story about Kate and how she saw different motivation in different distance, in different locations and cultures, and then what can be done with that. And mainly I'm going to talk and tell stories and some output out of it. So I was using Hofstede as a system, but this system was mainly on my experience. So somewhere it might be aligned and somewhere it might be controversial. Again, the goal is to be left with questions. So let's begin. My name is Ekaterina, but it's difficult to pronounce for everybody except people from Russia. So usually I ask people to call me Kate or somebody calls KitKat, whatever is comfortable, but still. So I work in the borderline of psychotherapy, classical psychotherapy, then organizational psychology, and HR. So it all combined, messed up, and all aligned together. And so far, I've worked with founders, with teams, with the individual from 19 countries, I guess, if my count is right. And some really funny stories came out of this. So those stories I want to share. Uh, Mainly, Russia and India will be two main characters. So Russia is where the name comes from, and India where the accent comes from. So as you can see, and the main insights of culture also came from Indian workspace and comparison of Russian and Indian workspace. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So when after having some nice experience in Russia, in Europe, in ex-Soviet countries, when I came to some company in Bangalore, and person on my third day of office, my colleague, my employee to be precise, took me to the washroom and told me, "Ma'am, your distance between two buttons is too big. Your position is not allowing you to have the same." That shoot me to my head. First I got confused. I was like, how is that possible? Why the person is saying something like that? How rude it can be. Then after coming down, then I realized that power distance came from this kind of things. For example, in India, you are not supposed to be talking the same way with your colleagues and with your reportees and with your boss. In India, you're not supposed to leave your office before your boss leaves the office. Or whenever people were leaving before 7 or at 7, we were joking that they're taking half day. So it's normal to stay after working hours, especially before COVID. After COVID, things changed, but the jokes are there and the culture is there. So the distance is there. And oppositely, in Russia, during summertime when it's hot, it's a high time for some dresses and some really space for showing like of abilities. So, and then it never comes to the relationships. It never comes to maintaining the space around. Why am I talking about this in general? Like, how is it connected to mental health? So again, before session, while preparing, I was thinking, if I talk about mental health in general, how would I explain what is it? Like, what is exactly mental health? It's a just a such a big word, such a like generous something. It's like universe. Then I asked ChatGPT, how do I explain? Okay, didn't think that much. And ChatGPT told me that this is how we think, how we act, and so on. Then I got a little frustrated because mental health, it's not how I think, it's how I organize the life. So, and this organizing the life is the core meaning for me, and maybe for some of you. How do I organize the life, and how do I benefit, or how do I struggle because of my organizing, me organizing the life in some way? So power distance has a big role in that, if we're talking about organizational space. Then motivation. Motivation was a big fun for me. So I was working in some consultancy in Russia and Europe, and we were talking mainly about non-material motivation, which is more about developing, which is more about growth, personal growth, where I can write in CV how much I have done on previous workspace, so it allows me to get better hike in the next space and do something, meaningful. And when I was having some chat with a client from Kurdistan, Iraqi Kurdistan, he told me that this is some nonsense, that they don't have this system. They work to expand, they work to get money, they work to like some different kind of motivation. Or when, again, coming back to Indian workspace and how it organized, when I'm talking about motivation with Indian founders, startup ecosystem in India is huge. When I'm talking to people from India, they're like, obviously, it's only money. It's like the first answer which comes. And here we see the kind of organization of workspace which we hardly find in some other places. For example, um, yearly hike. India was the first country where I have seen companies like regularly do that. Half-year hike, 6-month hike, or 12-month hike. It's a regular process to keep the motivation on. Or in India is very high appreciation motivation. When people get to know in front of others that they need it. And in general, Olga was speaking about that, about relationships which are maintained in the company. I would say, for example, in Russia, to get things done is more important than to continue relationships. Oppositely, in India, relationships are more important than things are getting done somehow. It will be get done. And within that, huge amount of uncertainty comes because we decided something. And then we keep chatting, and there's a joke that IST, the Indian time, it's not Indian standard time, it's Indian stretchable time. So then we keep chatting, we keep having good conversation and good relationships, but things are not getting done. And first years of my experience in India, I was getting so frustrated. I was like, how can you survive in this uncertainty? Because in Russia, uncertainty avoidance is 90%. In India, it's just 40%. And people who comes, like there are a lot of companies of oil in India, Russian companies, if you're talking about that, with the Russian employees dealing with Indian vendors. How big is the level of anxiety? It's insane. And oppositely, when I'm speaking to Indian founders, they're saying that Russians are crazy to have deal with. They're not reliable because they're aggressive. They're very straightforward. And here the question comes: how to organize the life in the way that it's suitable for everybody. So I'm giving example more of Russian Indian culture. But for example, I had some client from Armenia, and he was telling me that you cannot fire a person because it's a question of relationships. Because you cannot hire a person who was working for you for 10 years. Even if he doesn't perform, even if he doesn't show up at workspace, you just can't, because it's a matter of respect. So from country to country, it's different. And it's nice if you can write in the chat also like your reflection on this and maybe your stories of this also. So the question is how to organize the life. That's the main question. And considering that mental health isn't one size fits all, and this is what also the Amira was speaking about, that it depends on cultural lenses, it depends on the house we were raised in, it depends on the colleagues we have in. So if I was working for like 7 months in the South Indian company, my accent will be there with me for the rest of my life. This is how it grows up, and this is how the health grows up in some way. So how to organize the life and what the leader can do, because Olga was also saying about that, that it's not only HR who is responsible for that. They can be initiators, but they cannot be executors for that. The leaders can be the ones who organize the culture inside their teams. So what they can do, they can normalize the conversation. They can start with themselves. They can talk openly what kind of difficulties they have, what kind of stress factors might be good for others, and uh, giving more difficulties again. I'm saying over here that it doesn't show weaknesses, but at the same time, I'm just thinking that in a high power distance company, uh, the form of talking probably will be different from the company where the distance is low. In the high distance, it will be more of suggestions, how it can be, and some other stories, some heroes which are not connected with the personality, just to be safe and to secure the self-esteem. But the goal is to make sure that the conversation is happening. That's the main goal. The form can be different. Then I would say that cultural curiosity makes a lot of sense. For example, in India, there is a celebration called Karva Chauth, where a wife keeps fast for her husband. And from region to region, the way of celebration will be different. The way of puja will be different, the way of dressing up will be different, and so on. So it's nice to have that curiosity of 5 years old kid, even if you're a big boss and even you have a big team. It's nice to have the curiosity of how the thing's done, how it organized, and what are the differences. And there are a huge amount of forms again, how it can be done in different ways, how different forms of the same event, of the same celebration, or the same meaning can be organized in the same space. Then it feels safe. And then also, I'm talking over here about that people need to be gave something which they understand. I had a very funny situation when Diwali, which is a huge celebration in India, people have to, like, they supposed to give gifts to each other and so on. So once employee didn't get the gift from my hands because I didn't come to his house, because the tradition is not to just give. The tradition is to come to the house and show that you respect. So that's a very big question. And to be honest, I don't have an answer for that. What is more important, to remember where I come from, or to give the person which he understands that he respected? So that's a controversial question, and the answer will be left with everyone on their own understanding of life. But within my experience, sometimes I feel that it's better to give the people something which they understand rather than keep my self-esteem in the same way, because I can figure it out myself back and bounce it, remembering where I come from. But for some people, they might have it as a mm, personal touch, which they will remember with the positive or negative attitude. And of course, tailored support. Again, Olga was talking about that already. Instead of just policy, which is like single for everything and for everybody, it's nice to have a diverse format because, again, for European countries, some open conversations, some coaching ones, and some group therapy, even inside the organization, will be more appreciated than, for example, in India. In India, it will be more of surveys, some anonymous forms, and exercises of productivity, which includes mental health exercises inside. So, what I also try to say is that forms are different, but the goal remains the same. Uh, these three points which I was using, it's all came from Hofstede and a little bit from Mayer. If you're interested, you can read about that. And I guess on YouTube, there are a huge amount of videos on the same topic. Mm, that's it. I was trying to be as compact as I can. If you have questions or objects or you want to tell your story, I'm very happy to hear some. So you can reach out.